My guest today is Harold Aho Now, who had a spontaneous awakening at the age of 33 that led him to understand the solar eclipse's path of totality, which gave him sacred messages that our planet Earth wants him to share with us at this time. And I am most especially interested in the information that he got about water because I've been having an incredible amount of information coming to me about the sacred properties of water. So I am really excited to talk to Harold today. So welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. And I thank you for the water prompt. Um, the water part of everything is like super important. So I'm super excited to be here.
Well, I'll share with you and the audience why this is kind of coming up for me. Over the summer, I took a hiatus and I have a little log cabin in the middle of nowhere in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And I don't do any interviewing during that time. I only edit, and it's my time to recharge my batteries. And one of the things that I have access to at that cabin is a well, and it doesn't have any additives in the water. The water is very pure. It runs through sands near Lake Superior, and it's like super, super special water. Like I bring it back to Arizona with me. And over the summer, I was somehow guided to a special on Amazon Prime about water. I think it's over an hour, maybe it's an hour and a half documentary. And it talked about all these properties of water, things that I knew, like that if we said different words, they would have an effect on the crystallization of the water when frozen, and different properties that water has. And of course, we're made of water mostly. And I came to realize not only through that, but through an incident in an interview that I had with somebody who had a near death experience, where on the other side, the water came to him and asked if the water could overcome him and cleanse him and purify him. And so all of these things are leading me to believe that water isn't what we thought it was. It's not just something that we drink to nourish our bodies, but that water actually holds sacred properties and is, I'm going to call it a sentient being. So, can we start right here with this water conversation? Because
Yeah.
you mentioned it. And what in the world is water? What have you uncovered?
So basically we're gonna reverse engineer this. So the water part is one of the last things as far as water and the way we interact with water and the planet and the cosmos and how we can program the water. It holds memory. And just like you said, maybe 5 seconds before you said you feel like water may be this sentient being, that was like this notion of coming through, that it does hold and maintain its own type of light and information. And so solar eclipses, all this stuff, all behind me back here, I have I call them galactic hints. And whether it's this guy on this side or the cosmic X of the two solar eclipses over Texas, that's on that map, which you can find on my website, and it's got a legend. It'll show you all the stuff that I discovered within the two solar eclipses. But one of the main things it did was it kept me here in San Antonio. This, mind you, I'm 46, about to turn 47, and I had my awakening at 33. So I've been in this for quite some time. And a big part of the process is to leave the major cities, to go by land and work with water much more intimately, create conscious communities and whatnot. But
I love
the
that. Well, then let's back up a little bit and
yeah,
let's maybe start at the beginning of your journey, which is what I alluded to when I was introducing you. Will you tell us about your spontaneous awakening that you had when you were 33?
yeah. So to start off with these synchronicity numbers, because that's 33, that's a magical number for a lot of people. A lot of people have had their awakening at that time. But I was born on 11/22/77 at 11 p.m. on the dot. Like everything about my, we can call it a codex, we can call it a blueprint, we can call it my modus operandi, like the way that I operate is to be a reflection of synchronicities. So when I was 33, I had I had my daughter at that time, my first daughter. She was 3 years old. Her mother and I had separated, and I had a lonely home for a week when my daughter wasn't there. And I went through this depression, loneliness. Um, I felt like I was in the crossroads of everything. I just did not know what to do with my heart, like literally my heart. Didn't know where to go. So one night after her mom came and picked her up, so I was ready for a week of not having my daughter, and being in that depressed state, I found myself like crying myself to sleep and just asking the universe, because I didn't have a belief, any religious belief. I had that in the background. My father was Lutheran. My mom, I think she's Catholic. Like she'll claim it, but she never pushed anything, any kind of religious anything on us ever. And I come from a broken home. So I was, with my father at some time and with my mom, and neither one of them pushed religion. But this belief in a higher power and this belief in and there may be something orchestrating this place that we're in was always there. So, and also, I believed in ETs, ghosts, paranormal, this and that, and all of the above. So I had all these puzzle pieces. And so that night I'm going to sleep and I'm crying, and I just say out to the universe, just like, somebody point me in the right direction. Like I am lost and I don't know what to do. And the the next morning, I'm at a call center is where I'm working at the time, and they did alumni directories. They don't exist anymore, but alumni directories for 90% of the universities, colleges, sororities, fraternities, all the military membership books. So if you were in a member, like some kind of a special club or something, we would reach out, or the company would reach out and say, hey, we can keep all of you guys connected. We can, update the books, and you can put like what you do for business, and if you want to network or just recap or whatever it is. And so we're an inbound call center, and I'm looking at my screen. I get this call, and this lady, we're having a great conversation. It's very easy flowing. And when we get down to what she does for work, she stops and kind of confused, not knowing what to do because her career path has changed. And I'm like, well, let me know what it is. We can work with it. I'll make it sound good. And she's like, well, I'm a spiritual healer. And I'm like, can you tell me more about what that means? And she's like, well, I started channeling this being and talked to Pleiadians and this and that. And I'm like, okay, what now? And I'm
What
like,
year is this?
this is in late 2010.
Okay.
So it's just maybe like around November of 2010. And I know that because I have this scratch paper, and I believe this scratch paper will be famous in the future, not too long from now, because it has. So I basically asked her to tell me more, and she says, well, are you prepared for me to open Pandora's box? And I'm like, sure, yeah, looking for a pen and paper. Pandora's box all day long. What do you got for me? So, she starts telling me all these different subject matter, like the Galactic Federation of Light. She talks about Hopa Ona Ono. Look that up. She talks about David Wilcock, Enigma 2012. Go look him up. Edgar Tolle, Carolyn Miss, Anatomy of a Spirit, Ashtar Command, and just like all these things, websites, books, subject matter. And I'm like, okay, I got it. And I stayed on the phone with her for quite some time. And that was a no-no when you're trying to sell someone a CD or a book, right? And I was notorious for that. And I was good. My percentage was high on a close rate, but I was long on the phone calls. And before we got off the phone, the information that she gave me, I told her, I was like, look, if I lose my job from this, I don't even care. Whatever you gave me, it's going to, like, I needed this. Like I said that on the call. And so I got in trouble. A couple of days later, I got called into HR, and Bethany, who is the HR person, she went to the same high school as me. So we had a little bit of like kinship there. And she was very nice, like a bubbly lady. And I got a slap on the wrist, and she goes, but Harold, I need you to listen to this. There was another voice that came on. She was like, I listened to the whole thing. There was nobody else that I could hear that was in y'all's conversation. But when you and her said this other angelic voice came on and said, beautiful. And I'm like, what? I tried to find out if she was still there, if I can get the audio. And like I said, the company doesn't exist. That's how I found out, because I was like itching to retell my story and document this stuff. So that was the beginning. That night, I dove into David Wilcock Enigma 2012, and that's like 3 hours worth of data. And he's putting the religious with the spirituality, with the NASA scientist stuff, and like correlating all these things on our entire cosmos is heating up. It's not just us. It's not just, even humans causing this global climate change. It's part of a solar process, a cosmic process. And so took a deep dive into all of this YouTube University for 6 months until I met my partner. She was my neighbor. So my, whatever it was like we were destined to meet, because, you know, we split up and now I'm like, have all this new information. I'm super inspired about everything. And so I want to tell someone, I want a companion. And I see the light left on in this young lady's car while she's not in the car, and I'm like, man, her battery's gonna die. So I go knock on the door. Hey, ma'am, your car light. I see the tire low on her car, and I'm like, oh man, she's like, she's got a flat tire. Like, hey, you got a flat tire. And so it kind of, I'd seen her with her boys and never with any man. So after 6 months, and I have all this new information, all this spiritual and galactic knowledge, and you just so much information. I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to like let this out. And I asked her out on a date. And after that, we just have been together ever since. But the one thing that kind of reeled her in, like yanked on the line, was we were driving back from our date, and that ET song by Katy Perry was very popular at the time, and it came on the radio, and I'm like, ooh, I like this. She's like, oh, you like that? And I was like, yeah, you believe in extraterrestrials? And she's like, yeah, yeah. And so that right there, I had her, because she doesn't have, those are like conversations that she's been wanting to have, and there was nobody that was interested in that stuff. So that's kind of where I kept her, and we talked, and we've been on this ride for 13 years now. 6 months after we got together, we found ourselves in Sedona on 11/11/11. All right, not too far away from you. And
Right. And Sedona, by the way, is the entire reason I moved to Arizona anyway. Of
right.
course, right?
Yeah, exactly, right. So I don't know if you know about the types of stuff that went on there for 11/11/11, but the 13 crystal skulls that are like ET made, and all kinds of myths and legends about them, they made their way through Sedona during that date. There were a bunch of people that came in from all over the world to synchronize, and I went there for a starseed gathering. And
Back in 11/11 of 2011.
yes, all
Okay.
this stuff. I was only 6 months in. It's all new. I found some guys on YouTube, Rion de Rowan and another guy, Arcturus Raw. They created an organization called Team Light, Unite the Collective. And it was all these people from all around the world, kind of like how TikTok is right now. But YouTube had everybody doing like energy manipulation, and pushing energy and speaking light language. And, it was so cool, and, real fuzzy videos, right? It's like so old. But it was really raw at that time. Our production skills were so minimal. We were just putting out content, and that was kind of where I was keyed in, was YouTube. And so there was a calling. They put together this event, and they were going to be gathering on Cathedral Rock at a specific
Mm.
time. And we didn't make it to that particular gathering. It's so crazy. Like, we were supposed to go and visit Sedona and go see the main street and have some other types of experiences. I wasn't supposed to meet these people at that time, but I wanted to so bad. I was like desperate. I was like, no, they're at the top of the mountain that we don't know how to get up to, but we're going to go up this way. And it was dusk, and we had no flashlight. And we're only 6 months into our relationship, Amber and I. And so she's kind of freaking out, saying, "Wow, I didn't know this guy was a little crazy. He's trying to drag me up a mountain." So I conceded and said, "You know what? It's not working." She's like, "Look, calm down. Let's just go to the main street. We were there earlier. You said you wanted to go back and check it out. Let's go there." And so we did. And there were synchronicities that happened there with, I was connecting, like I could tell how higher selves were connecting. Like my higher self was talking to someone else's that was at a shop, because I noticed a book and they didn't, they were like, "Oh, you should check out this book." And like, so there were so many synchronicities that I was like, you're either a really good salesperson or watching me the whole time, or our higher selves are connected, and da 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 da. And she's like, "You're speaking a big game, guy. How about I put you on my Aura video photograph machine and see where you're at?" And we had done one earlier that day. We took one of those vortex tours. We stopped at a spot. I got an Aura photograph, and I had all this black around me and everything was red. And I was like, "Whoa, that doesn't look good." I'm looking at
Am I
everybody
gonna
else with
die?
pink and purples and white bright, and I'm like, really, I look like the Sith Maul or whatever it is from Darth Vader. I'm like, why do I look like that? And then so we go later on. I'm thinking it's a glitch, right? And we do it later on. That lady invites me. She's like, "Look, I'll gift you a free thing. You're speaking about some things that are really high level, and I want to see where you're at." And it was the same thing. And I'm like, "That's weird. Why is that?" And I'm like, "Well, maybe I'm just because I'm in the beginning of my spiritual awakening." And it was kind of that, right? Because later on, we found a shop here in San Antonio, and it had an Aura video machine, but it recorded onto a VHS. So it was like old school on a CCTV camera, like a TV, right? So I'm looking at this TV, I'm doing a 10-minute long Aura video session, and I can see I started off orange when they turn it on. I'm like, "Okay, cool. Well, that's not red. We're moving up. All right." And I'm like, "All right, let's take some deep breaths. Let's see if we can go yellow." And I'm like, "All right, take some deep breaths," and shifts to yellow. And I'm like, "All right, well, what's the next one?" Heart chakra. All right, I'm gonna start thinking about my daughter. And I'm just gonna close my eyes, take a deep breath, and I start saying, "Love, love." And I peek my eyes open, and it's like going from yellow to green. And I'm like, "Wow." And I still have it on VHS. I should put it on CD sometime, or digital, right? But very early on in my process, I saw how I was able to be the one that creates the shift. And it, and how our auric field can shift from moment to moment, right? And possibly with that, it could probably shift space to space, right? Intention to intention. And so, again, very early on, this process of following my gut led me to discovering things about myself. Like, especially when I first dove into this, as soon as we find that spiritual shop in San Antonio or even in Sedona, I'm telling people, like, "Oh," they're like, "What's your birth date? What's your signs?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm born 11/22/77 at 11 p.m. sharp." And they're like, "Whoa, master numbers are correct." And I'm like, Whoa, me? Okay, woe is me." I'm like, "No, once you start learning this stuff, we see these numbers throughout, our phones, license plates, all kinds of things. We look for these signs, and oftentimes we sit there and say, "Okay, I see the sign, but what are you telling me? What does it
Yeah,
mean?"
that's a big thing.
So if we go to, I'm not going to jump all the way to the end now, but where I'm at now, I'm honoring that I am a walking portal and a walking reflection, but also I am what people have been asking for. Can that synchronicity tell me verbally with his hand motions and tell me what's going on? And so I'm here as a walking representative of synchronicity numbers and angel numbers to say, my name is Harold by birth, right? And I've only made a small switch from HAROLD to HERALD. And when you look at, and that is the Germanic roots of herald. And if you look at the meaning of herald, you would find yourself at heraldry, which is a symbol decoder, someone that can look at the coat of arms back in the medieval days and say, oh, that's this person within that hierarchy. And the other part of a herald is the messenger. And, you know, we talk about a messenger between kings, but you also talk about a messenger of the gods. And it also would mean that's what Hermes is. So we get into the Greek pantheon, we get into all these things, but I'm literally here as an embodied being from a collective intention of the world saying, all right, I need some assistance here. It's a little kooky. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Can we make this make sense? And, you know, I pride myself on solution-based processing. I look at the world around me and I assess the situation and I look at the resources and I say, what can get us to the next level of our expression? And so Sedona was a huge prompt for me with seeing how they integrated spirituality and metaphysics along with the physical. And they were working like so that, you know, the person that I saw at the fudge shop was working, you know, they were paying bills with what they were doing, but the person in the crystal shop also doing the same thing, but involved in this metaphysical talk and this higher, you know, expression of storytelling and whatnot. So it inspired me, and I wanted to bring that back to San Antonio and also look outside of the city and just this area to put that type of an imprint. And the hill country of Texas is beautiful. There's water flowing everywhere, rolling hills. So that began this like pipe dream, like, okay, we want to go out that way, get away from this over here with all this confusion. And they literally have built a space that if I wanted to fix it, I would need to go and, you know, demolish and rebuild and then tell people like, hey, this sucks and we got to do it different. And they're like, no, it doesn't. It's been there for 10, 20 years. And I'm like, what does that matter? So there's like a lot of things within our larger cities that can be, that are going to be maneuvered. But at that time, I was in and out of the city. I was looking for land, but I was also looking at how do I, you know, help the people that are lost. Because my children at the time, they're like, you know, in the school system. Because when Amber and I got together, she had 3 boys. So I've got 3 bonus boys, and I had my daughter. And then not too long after our Sedona trip, we conceived our first child, Autumn. And Autumn came in, I mean, her birthday is coming up here real soon, or a little bit later this month. So me wanting to bring this data, this way of being that I was inspired by Sedona into this area. When we were celebrating our 1 year anniversary, we were in Comfort, Texas, and we took a little trip to Fredericksburg, Texas, which is about 20, 30 minutes away. It's just a larger, small town known for like its grapevines and like wildflower tours and all kinds of stuff. So we took the trip up there, and on the way, I saw this for sale sign on the side of the highway. It said land for sale, 753 plus or minus acres. And I'm like, I think that's enough acreage. We're looking at land. We need some land. We need to buy the land. And then now, you know, it was this almost like internal prompt for me to look at, okay, all right, say you got the land. Now what are you going to do? And I'm like, well, shoot, I need water, I need food, I need electricity. And so now it's like, all right, go find out how do you get water, food, electricity, and da 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 da. And so we start looking into permaculture, earth ships, hemp houses, solar, wind, you know, hydroelectricity, all the different ways to build and be a thriving community. And I always knew it wasn't just going to be me because 753 acres of just me and my family. Like we've got a big family of 6 children, but that's still a lot of acreage. So it's always been, you know, my friends and the people that I knew I was going to meet along the way. Because I knew that was part of the process because of all the investigating and what I was seeing. Everybody was saying the same things. They were all wanting to escape the matrix. And
Mhm.
so that prompt was, and it's funny too, my initial awakening, I was in a cubicle. I got this, it was an inbound call. It was almost like Morpheus called me. My friend Joni Eisinger, she's Morpheus. It's like, and woke me up out of that. And that night, I'm in a feverish slumber in a computer, just like Neo, like, what's going on? Following the rabbit. I didn't go to any clubs and meet Trinity like that, but Amber is my Trinity. And she was there the whole time, right? So it's funny how art imitates real life, and so I see those correlations, and it astounds me because sometimes it doesn't come until years later. And so that was a recent thing, like, oh wow, I was in a cubicle. Oh yeah, and I got a message from someone that woke me up, like Morpheus. Like I feel like I'm Neo. So um now we've found land. We are looking at permaculture. We're looking at the ways to build on there. And also, you have to remember we're getting into late 2012. So around that time is the Mayan end of the Mayan calendar.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
December 21st, 2012 is coming up quick. And funny thing is, I made a YouTube video of Amber, myself in Sedona, and I posted it, and this guy found me. He grew up in San Antonio, but lives in Dallas, or he was living in Austin at the time. And we became friends. And he was like, hey, there's a Ohm at the Dome in Austin happening on 11/11/2012. You're like, you should come up, bro. And I'm like, yeah, I should. And I took the two little ones, uh, my oldest now, Sadie, and then our other boy, Javi. I took them with me. We did yoga on the front lawn of the state capitol building, and then 300 plus filed in to the state capitol building in the middle of a work week, suits walking around us, briefcases and all that. And we took over all 4 floors and we ohmed for 21 minutes. And then afterwards, we sang Imagine by John Lennon, hugged it out. And Miguel, which is the friend that was in Sedona, he happened to be in Sedona on 11/11/11. And he's introducing me to other people that were there on 11/11/11. He's like, hey, you should meet this guy, Jeremy Yaws. He makes orgonite pendants, which is what I make now. I've been making orgonite pendants for over a decade. I had a big, like, hockey puck of a piece on my neck when I met him. It was gifted to me by one of the ladies that worked at that bookstore, the spiritual bookstore that we found. And he's like, oh man, you should get a different one than that. I'll hook you up. And I'm like, man, I actually want to make these. So long story short, I've been making them for over a decade. But while we were there, after our ohming for 21 minutes in a dome, literally a granite dome, it's a resonant chamber we were in, hundreds, right? Intentions, dreams, heart palpitations, frequencies are emanating from this state capitol building on 11/11/2012. So afterwards, I meet Jeremy Yaws of Orgone Vortex, and he's like, dude, we're going to do an activation at Enchanted Rock in like 2 days. You should come out. And I'm like, man, I want to go. That sounds cool. That sounds like some Sedona stuff. I want to go, and it's not as far. So, and I'd never been to Enchanted Rock, and I didn't know the significance of Enchanted Rock, obviously, at that time, because I didn't even know about it. But long story short, Enchanted Rock is an ascension portal in Texas. It's a big 420-foot or 450-foot granite dome. Like, it's a big rock that has about the size of the entire state building going underground. And so there are said to be telluric ley lines, water ley lines that come up from Monterrey, that come from the Mayan ruins. They come up from the Mayan ruins, and I'm looking at the United States map. Okay, so you are gonna have to mirror it. So it comes up the Mayan from the Mayan ruins, and it hits Monterrey, and it forks. Half of that energy goes, or the telluric, the water ley line goes to Sedona, and the other half goes to San Antonio, Austin, and Enchanted Rock. And it was this article that I found in 2021 that was created in 2012, and it was on the Galactic Free Press. And I found this article because I was doing some research on Enchanted Rock to find out if it was a chakra point for Mother Earth. And that was in 2021 when I was doing this research, because we did another activation there. But if I tie this back and close the loop on water and enchanted rock and Egyptian and the Mayan and all these places and these sacred sites, as a lot of us know, these sacred sites were on top of limestone
Landmines.
and in
Yeah,
aquifers.
landmines. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So when I was invited to do this activation for Enchanted Rock, the person that was leading it, it was an activation to honor the Hathors. I hadn't dove into Egyptian stuff yet. I'm like, sure, I don't, what, let's do it. And I didn't even grasp 85% of the stuff she said. It just wasn't like resonating at that time. I was there to be, right? I was just there to be. Because again, I am a walking code. If you have a combination and all the numbers are these angel numbers and it unlocks things and you put this combination in different places, it unlocks things, it unlocks things, and it unlocks things. And I didn't know that's what I was doing when I was walking this path. I was following my gut. I'm really into human design now, and looking back, I'm like, bro, you were just following your gut, like really good. Like that's the way it's supposed to be done for a manifesting generator. I follow my gut, I get inspired, I feel a squeeze to my throat, and I go decree and I speak about it and I imprint it into the holographic matrix. And if you can imagine, there's vapors within this entire etheric, like this in the air. So that's water. That's another representation of water. And we can program it just like Dr. Masumoto would say when he would put the words on the water. We're literally putting our tones, our frequency into water. It's a holographic matrix, and you can send it out into the, I call it the universe. Like this is just you as a alchemical tone and a frequency that creates its own song and dance along with a bunch of other symphonies. And it's just, you and a verse. And we're just telling our stories. And when we get done with this whole game, we're going to have so much spiritual like currency, right? And it'll flow like a current, you see. And so the spiritual currency, we don't use monetary things outside of this. We're when you go into another planet or an existence and you carry your memories, you go in there and you're like, this is what I just experienced. Let me tell you how I flipped a planet and how we found out all the secrets of the codex and the blueprint of the space that we were in and unlocked it all from the inside out. And that's a story that we're going to tell, because the biggest part of this process was the activation of me. So part of what I have adapted in my teachings is what I call IBM, and it stands for intention, breath, and movement. We're a physical being, not just like move and dance and do mudras, but it's like move to the places that you're being guided to. And so let's go to 2012 into the Mayan calendar, after we obviously did our activation on 11/13/2012. We did the thing at Enchanted Rock, activated it, and then the world didn't shift. Now I'm sitting there like, all right, we're waiting for the guys with the good guys to turn the guns on the bad guys and say, aha, we were here waiting the whole time. We just had to get the paperwork done over there. And so that way we could do all this whole thing, right? Now everybody gets Nasara, Jasara, you get your lump sum of money plus your monthly stipend, so you can go and heal yourself and do the things and da da da. And so 2013 comes through, and I'm like, all right, twirling my thumbs. I'm like, where's it going? 2014 comes around, and I'm like, now I'm really getting frustrated because I'm hearing things like, oh, they're going to do it this day and they're going to do it that day. And you wait, you meditate, you focus, you think things are going to happen and it doesn't. And your hopes are just like smashed in front of you. And I have children. So the whole time I'm looking at ways to secure a beautiful space for my creations. I'm the creator. Like I came from my mother and my father, they're the creators too. And I'm a creation from them. And now I'm a creator with my own children. And so I'm looking at cleaning up this space for my children. Even when I'm gone, they can go and be safe and flourish and create and do the divine, beautiful thing that they're here for. So when the world didn't shift, I pulled up my pants and I said, you know what? I've learned enough. I need to go do this on my own. And there's an empty lot in our neighborhood down the block. I'm gonna go knock on everybody's door around that empty lot, and I'm gonna find out if they're cool if I try to put a community garden here. Like, we need food. We need to eat healthy. My children are eating, trash at the school, and they're telling me about it. I know about it. And we're all like just eating, the stuff that's just not the best for us. And so my solution was like, let's start a community garden, start the communication, and let's show them how putting the seeds in your mouth and having it adapt to your DNA is going to help you much more than just tossing them in the soil, just as it is. And we can talk, communities can communicate, and we'll build, and I'll find out who has this business or who has that business, and we'll all like work with each other and localize our economy in as much ways as we can. So I knocked, found out who owned the property. The next step was to find an organization to help me. I found one called Green Spaces Alliance, and at that time they'd helped the city gain over 40 different community gardens, and they had a community garden 101. How do you get your stewards? How do you make it last? All the things. So I'm like, man, this is awesome. All right, now I'm going to go to my children's elementary school and see if they want to collaborate, because that's big news right there. The school's in on it, then I can probably get businesses to donate money, sponsor resources. Now I obviously have manpower. So I called them up, and the principal's like, well, let me get you on the phone and you can come and meet with me and the coach, because we just won $20,000 from a San Antonio Spurs team up challenge, and we're going to build our own garden. And we don't know anything about gardening, Harold. Maybe you can help us. And I'm like, well, y'all got the money, you got the land already. Like, let's go over there. So I helped them on day one. We put together 12 raised beds. Within 2 years, the school itself, I didn't do it all. They did it. There's life and death and all kinds of things that are also containing this evolution of this school that, at this time I'm looking at schools as a indoctrination station, right? For the masses. Millions of children go through this school system that indoctrinates them into a worker bee or whatever it is they want, right? And so I'm like, you know what? They should have gardens. Nature should be in all schools. We should have gardens in all schools. They should be drinking healthy water. They should have healthy food in all schools. What if our children had that? What if they had breath work? What if they taught gene keys, human design, astrology charts, astronomy, along with the science and all the other things, and sustainable practices, and also said, you know what, since we're here for however many hours a day, let's also look outside the school grounds and see how we can affect our community. So those are the ideas that were pumping through me as I was wanting to put this community garden, and saw that the school was doing this. Now I'm like, all right, I'm in here now. I'm in the school. Every parent should do this. Every parent has an opportunity to call their school and say, hey, y'all have a garden? No, you don't. Well, I think it'd be good if y'all had a garden. Oh, you know what? We want to put a garden, and we've actually been talking about it. And then it's like these synapses start to create, come together and fire off. And now you have multiple beings that represent a whole selection of stars and planets, and what they are, multi-dimensional being communicating with another person that represents stars and planets and a multi-dimensional aspect of self. And they're wanting to do something for the children, for the creations that are all here. And that right there it just morphs things. And so the school, the coach, the principal, they wrote grants for a 20-foot tall water harvesting cistern. They put in a solar drip irrigation. They put in a butterfly garden. They've taken food from the garden, putting in the cafeteria, so the children walk by and said, food from our garden, and then the rest of the food. But along with that, they got rid of all the junk food as much as they could. They got rid of the junk food for the children and the faculty. Even when the teachers would have like a meeting, they couldn't go get tacos. And you know how hard that is when you're living in San Antonio? That you can't escape tacos. I'm still eating bean and cheese and bacon, and I'm like, all right, the pig was good. The pig was good. But when I did that, the school became the 7th healthiest school in the nation within 2 years. And it wasn't things that I did completely.
Pretty
It were
impressive. So say that again. It became the 7th healthiest
healthiest
school in the
in the
nation.
nation.
How did they
Some
measure that?
There's a organization called, and I'm probably gonna get it wrong. I'm gonna mix some words, but it's Alliance for Healthier Generations, some type of an organization that has all the key metrics that says if you up the PE time this much, you've hit that one. If you got rid of the junk food, you hit that one. And so they did all the things, and they were one of the only schools in all of Texas, not only just the nation, that achieved the gold standard. And you know, it's again, I come in as these coherent codes. It's in my DOB. I cannot escape it. I didn't make it up. I can't make it up. I was dropped in here at a specific time and date and space to bring and herald in the IBM, the intention, the breath, and the movement. Because when I called the school, I had my intention set, right? And then when I breathe, this is what I teach is like when you take your breath in, you're taking it in, but if you imagine it's surrounding your heart, it's in your lungs doing a chemical process and it's surrounding your heart. Hold your breath, and your heart emits those frequencies in through the whole blood and the oxygen and carbon dioxide, and then you exhale it. And then that information goes back out into this holographic matrix. But again, we chose to be in a physical suit, so we move. And so again, that could be dance, that could be mudras, that could be meditation. Like I moved to meditate there. I did a bowing meditation. I did a walking meditation. Or you show up to the Food Policy Council of San Antonio and you go listen in on the rest of the organizations that are doing things for food sovereignty in your city. And you can discover those in every major city. There's some type of advocacy program or organization that has been formulated that is there for food sovereignty, and they need volunteers and they need more eyes on the prize. And so those are the things that I started to do in my own living life. I mean, my days off from working, I was at a food policy council once a month, or I was volunteering to put more gardens in schools and call up schools and find out, do y'all have a garden? How successful is it? How many parents are involved? What organizations in your community are involved, like businesses, and to find out those things. So there's a practical approach to get us to this heaven on earth. And it's not going to be just everybody exodus out of the cities and go buy a plot of land and find your community and go off grid. There's going to be a process within our cities. And I really do feel like our school system is the most adequate way to shift the entire matrix with our children having access to nature-based curriculum, sustainability-based curriculum, and all the other things. So that was a process I did in 2014 that got me through 2017. And there was a big reward that came to me in 2018. And it's one of the biggest things that I was guided to talk about with this, the book, The Beings. The main part I want people to get from, well, there's a lot of things that are very important in my chapter of the book. My chapter is called Solar Flash. And what happened in 2018 in October is the Philosopher stones that have been talked about in history came to me magically through a friend that got a hold of a bunch of them, because the stones, there's so much information. Like, so when you look into the Philosopher stones, people would think first off that it's not a real thing. It's not a physical thing. The other part of it that they would think is that it's only one stone. But what believe has happened is someone along the way held the intentions of how this stone alchemizes dreams and led into gold, dreams into alchemization into fruition. And they put that intention of the stone in their heart, and it created a million pieces. And so those million pieces of stones are now they're being distributed and put in places all across the planet. The stones are also called the Centamani stone, Cintamani.
I've never
Um,
heard of it before.
they only came out, recently into mass consciousness again. It's almost like they were kept under the rug. and then they recently came back out. But there's websites dedicated to the gridding of these stones. And these stones are also talked about by Buddhist monks, by Hindu, like there's all kinds of ancients have been communicating about these philosopher stones and the Centimani stone. If anybody is signed up to Gaia TV or has heard of
I
William
am.
Henry. So check out Arcanum, the first series, the first set of episodes. In the first 3 or 4 episodes, he talks about the Philosopher's Stone. He calls it the Shintamanaya Stone. And then he also talks about that guy back there. That's Nicholas Roerich. He was said to have the stone in the 1930s. And if you look at the history of that guy, he was working with our president in the 1930s during the Great Depression, FDR. And he was the guru to the vice president, Henry Wallace. And this information I got from William Henry, when I tapped into his show on Gaia TV. I was crying because I had already, when the stones came to me, we'll get back to the William Henry thing. Go ahead. You have a question.
I do have a question because so
Yeah.
you're telling me that these stones came to you. Do you have one of the stones that you can show us what it looks like?
Yes. Check it out. So I
Okay.
don't know how well you can see this. It looks like a lava rock. It's just a black little piece. But the cool thing about it, I don't know if you can see, but it's see-through. It's a tektite.
So it's translucent.
Yes, it's like a moldavite.
It's
So
almost
some of
kind
them
of like an agate. Agates have that property of being translucent.
they do as well. This would be more akin to like a moldavite, where this is a glass. This supposedly these stones are actually some type of celestial body that came from Sirius. And when they came through, it split into millions of pieces. And you'll see that there's little like, so if it's a glass and it landed on little pieces of dirt and particles of wood or rock, those indentions are inside of this. And those um um carbon pieces, what am I thinking? Anyway, the material, the wood or whatnot, when those decay, they empty out, and so you have all these little grooves and pits in these things.
Kind of like how a fossil does. Fossils
Yeah,
do the same thing.
right.
Mhm.
So these stones, when my friend reached out to me, his name is Eric McCool. So his last name is McCool.
Of course it is.
Right? I'm telling you, right? Like everything when I start circling back, it's like I'm closing loops on my own story, and I'm also rereading a chapter again. When we do that with books, we often find new perspectives that are like, oh man, that I didn't even notice that part was there. So this is what I do with and I think you this is one thing I really, and so I'm going to get it out now before I forget. And I knew you were really going to like this because
Okay.
with the near death experiencers, one of the most pronounced or the most poignant things that they talk about is the life review. I almost have to call
Yeah,
it.
that's my thing on this channel.
Right. So what I have been guided to, and I'm working on developing an app and using different modalities and things that would allow someone to do what I call a living life review. So you would go back and through your own birth date and then every different experience that is personal and important to you, go back and do like a journal, but take your astrological chart, look at the transits, look at your human design, what was happening with your mechanics, with your quantum self. And one thing that came to me, and a lot of people don't know about it, it's called the galactic calendar. It's also been called the dream spell calendar. It's a download or channeled information that came to a gentleman called, his name was Jose Arguelles in 1987. He got this download and came up with this calendar system that integrates the I Ching, the Hindu Brahmin chakra system, the chakras, the Mayan calendar, the Tolkien, and all these different systems of cyclical like number systems that just, they're like combinations. And so this calendar, the galactic calendar, my friends Bob and Eden Sky have been making a physical calendar of what this guy got as a download for like 27, 28 years. And it has beautiful art. And then it also has, and you can see in here that it has every day of the Gregorian calendar, and then also where it correlates with this 13-month, 28-day lunar cycle calendar. So
And they did the 13 because of the 12 zodiac, and then the one in the middle, which is the kind of the newer discovery in the Egyptian pyramids
Ophiuchus,
about what existed, right?
right. And to me, when we honor the space that we have been in, so there's the singularity point is going to be, and so to dial it in on what I was getting through with the living life review, just to finish that off, we're developing an app and a way for people to crosshair all these cosmic undertones of things, that they can find out why that experience happened the way that it did. Because I guarantee it's planets, stars, when they maneuver into a new combination of pinpointing down to you, the being, the heart, and then it reflects out, it creates this holographic matrix. And we may be going through processes along with, working with other people, and whatever process they're going to. We look at how we combine our auric fields and how they're communicating. And if we knew all parties involved in whatever story that we were going through and use these other modalities to find out the undertone, you'd really find out why you went through that. And then we use these things to go forward, right? So I use these calendar systems and my human design chart system and the transits and all these things to pinpoint how I want to effectively create and co-create the world that I'm desiring from my heart. And so discovering when the stones came, so the philosopher's stones helped to bring all this information in. So we got to remember, I did the work tangibly, practical. It's practical. This is why I say that I'm a practical spiritual advisor and community activist, because the spiritual knowledge and wisdom should take you to a point of activating your localized community and creating the heaven on earth scenario that you came here to co-create. Some people came to witness, some people came to do. I'm definitely part of the do crew, and I'm looking for the rest of the do crew. Like, we got to get up out of the meditation, open up our eyes, and like, how do we activate the space that we're in and take the practical approaches? Because again, we decided to come and play a physical role. So let's physically get out there, because it's also fun to sweat. It's also fun to, like, I went last weekend and I picked up trash. There's a local organization. There's a few, and I go as often as I can. We'll go to a natural waterway. We had a good storm that came through, and when a good storm comes through, you've got a lot of trash piles up all over the natural waterways. Not cool. You go out there and you're like, wow. Well, we had at least 100 volunteers that went through within 3 hours, and I had my headphones on, listening to good music, and I'm dancing while I'm picking up plastic. I'm plucking from the trees plastic that when the water rose really high, and I'm dusting her off. And and it was just fun. It felt really good to do. And the weather's really nice also. So it's not super hot, not super cold. But this application, this practical application of community activism is what I bring as an example, as a reflection. So I did the work. School became the seventh healthy in the nation. So now the Philosopher's Stone come in and they're like, all right, everything you dream of is about to turn into gold. And that's the information that came through. And Eric called me up and was like, Harold, I'm coming into San Antonio next week. I got a bunch of crystals and gems. I switched from working on hemp plant, making marijuana and stuff like that. He's like, I got away from the crop stuff and now I'm doing this. And this guy I'm teamed up with has a bunch of inventory, and I can come through next week. And I know you make the orgonite pieces. I know you're tapped into the spiritual community there in San Antonio and Austin, Dallas, Houston. I had already been making the rounds, going to transformational festivals, talking about my synchronicities and how I helped the children's school, and how it wasn't even me that did it all, but I went in as a multidimensional being of light, zip out into a human experience, tagging in with a bunch of other multidimensional beings. And so I'm like, that's how you do it. Go, go, go. And so when before we get off the phone, Eric told me, you got to look up like Nicholas Roerich. You got to find out more about these philosopher stones. They're myth, lore, legend. They're written about all over the place. Hitler tried to get him. Genghis Khan supposedly had a piece of philosopher stone and all these different things. I'm like, all right. I dive in, and Nicholas Roerich is one of the first people that I find. I don't know how well you can see it, but down there, there's a banner. It's a banner of peace. It's a red circle with 3 red circles in the center. And this banner of peace is something that guy put together. He's an artist, a philosopher, and he was so officially how he was working with FDR in USA was he was on a mission to go find drought resistant crops. We were suffering the Dust Bowl, Great Depression, all those things. America's in for a change at that time. And this philosopher, Russian mystic, is now on the payroll with USA going to find crops. That's what they say. But when I dove into this information, come to find out, he was actually on a mission to go find Shambhala and get America's Philosopher's Stone. And so when he comes back, that sign, that banner of peace gets activated before World War II, because part of his mission was to preserve art and all the ancient, whatever we had left whenever there was a war happening, instead of going in there and destroying all the museums and all that stuff, that banner of peace is to protect that, and it's to protect us. So as a community, if we come together and we have, a land and we're doing art, culture, and science, and we bear that banner, if there is a world war or a civil war happening, you are not to be touched. It's written in international law and treaty, 22 countries plus all of the Americas. It's called the Banner of Peace. It's called the Roerich Pact. And that's what he did as an artist. He got that done. And also, right after that, the organization called the WPA, and I forget, it's like the Works Progress Administration. So that's literally what got us out of the Great Depression financially. Somehow money came in and they funded a bunch of people to go out and work and build roads, schools, bridges, all kinds of things. So that's what got us out of the Great Depression. They also paid, I think it was like eight million to artists, struggling artists. They had to paint murals and do all kinds of things. And so that was part of what Nicholas Roerich, I feel, brought back to America and got us out of the Great Depression. And where I'm at in San Antonio, we have the San Antonio Riverwalk, a world famous riverwalk. The Riverwalk was constructed majorly off of the WPA's money and their financing. And it is called the crown jewel, or one of the crown jewels of that organization, because they got the most done with the least amount of money. And so this is where we're again there's water, the San Antonio River. And this stuff, when I got the Philosopher's Stones, this is where it started leading me. And so I had already planned a mission to grid this city with human beings, no organite, no crystals. I had planned something for 11/11, 2018. We were going to gather 2 people at a time, or 2 people on the north, south, east, and the west, all at the exact same time at 11:11 a.m. So little, like, what, 2 weeks before the activation, that's when the Philosopher's Stones come in. And I told Eric about it the week when he came in and was here at the house. And he's showing me all these crystal wands, pendulums. And I'm like, dude, this is dope. I could sell these. And he's like, but these stones, let me talk to you about them, da da da. They're made for gridding. And I was like, wow, we're actually going to be doing a gridding thing on San Antonio on 11/11. He's like, well, let me gift you these. These are literally for, creating and raising the frequency. And so he gifted over $200 worth of stones. And what we did is we buried them at each of the 4 directions of San Antonio, and also one in the center. And we gathered on the top of a parking garage at about 10 o'clock in the morning. We ohmed together, and thunder hit right at the time for everybody to break and go to their positions. It wasn't raining. It was misting. It was very like drizzly. It was hardly anything. And I had everybody listening to a song that I picked out the week before called Dragon's Mist. And it was a DJ mix by Desert Dwellers. They're a famous DJ group that goes all over the world. And so I had everybody at 11:11 press play, listening to the same song, stones in hand, two at each in each direction, three of us in the center. And I had us spinning first. Well, first it was clockwise to corkscrew into Gaia. Then it was clockwise for the next couple minutes to corkscrew into the cosmos. And then we sandwiched that in together and projected out from our center, heaven on earth. Food, happy, healthy, wealthy, and well people all throughout. We're focusing, we're looking in the center. But at the same time, I'm literally spinning them. Like I'm over here, I'm in the center of downtown and I'm looking out and I'm like, spin your energy, spin your energy. You need to spin, like I'm a plate spinner. That's what I felt like. Like keep going, keep going. And so we did this work and we got done. And I don't even think we met up afterwards. It was just like some secret community service thing that we did for San Antonio. And then the Stones were guided to go to Guatemala within a month. One of my friends that was part of the activation, Jeremy Oz, Orgone Vortex, the guy that I met on 11/12/2000 or 11/11/2012, he was part of the activation crew. And so he's getting invited to go to Guatemala for the Mayan Heart Festival on December 21st. They're holding a festival in front of Tikal, and Mayan elders are going to be there. And it's this whole thing of 5,000 year into this galactic thing. And I'm like, yo, the Stones got to go. I can't go. You take him. He's like, I can't go. I don't even have a passport. I really doubt I'm going to be able to make it. I'm like, well, who's going? He's like, they're going to go. I go meet up with a couple of friends that they say they're going to go. I'm like, yo, y'all have a lot of dragon energy. Take these stones, do this thing over there. Then right before time for the event, they're like, man, our passports got denied. We're not going to go. I'm like, shit. I tell my partner, I'm like, I got to drive up to Austin now. It's an hour away. So on my day off, I go drive up to Austin, bring the Stones back. Now I'm on Facebook. I'm looking on the group pages. I'm like, hey, anybody from Houston, Austin, San Antonio going? I'm going to get these Stones, got to make it. I find my friend Astra Christos and Clementine, and I meet them in Austin. They're flying out that day. They're like, we'll take them. Can you meet us at the airport? And I'm like, okay, what time? And they're like, aren't you in Austin? I'm like, no, I'm in San Antonio, but I'll go. This is part of the mission. So it would just so happen to be my day off. I'm like, Amber, I'm going up to Austin again. So I drive up there. I give them the Stones. They're flying. So now we know it's official. The Stones are going. She told me on the flight that the Stones connected with her and said that they need to go in the fire pit. So now she sent me back the video. Mayan elders are gathered around this fire pit in front of Tikal, the only Mayan ruins that you can still hold a fire ceremony. And they're praying and they're chanting. They got their beads. You hear the conchas in the background. You hear flutes. You see festival goers walking around. There's someone in a wheelchair. They're like, everybody's praying and chanting. It's beautiful. And she tossed the stones into the fire pit and she grabbed some of the ashes from that fire pit the next day, sent them back to me. I had 77 of my organite pendants that I added those ashes to. Because before I had the ashes and the stones and the ashes, my guide said, don't put them in the pendant yet. Because I crush crystals. Like when I make my organite, if I get a crystal, I'm gonna crush it. I'm gonna put it in my pendants. And I had these stones that are like the philosopher stones, and my guides are like, you can't yet. And I wanted to. I even told people when I was out vending, I'm like, I can't put these in there yet. So I'm selling them individually. And so after that, when they were put into the fire pit, that's how they initially got into organite, where now they're being squeezed. This intention is now being squeezed with gold and a copper Tesla coil and neodymium magnets. And I have 77, well, 76 plus me, 77 human beings walking around with these philosopher stone ashes that were chanted on by Mayan elders on December 21st, 2018. Right. So much like part of this heralding is to show people that the work has been done. The sacred places are gridded. The humans have gone and interacted. The dreams have been put out into the ethers. The work has been done, and now we're just watching the transference of power, right? Like the going from one state of being, which would be this, and I may ruffle some feathers on this, but this Fibonacci spiral dynamic of starting off at the number 1. It doesn't honor the 0. And that's, this is another thing that was brought to me because of these cosmic alignments. It's just another reward. We did the community service of spiritual activating with the Philosopher stones. And in 2020, the world shut down, right? So I'm like, what do I do now? I planned Ascension Summit 2020 in San Antonio and had met some amazing people that were bringing desert dwellers to San Antonio for the first time ever. And I'm like, I manifested that. So many other little things that bring it all together. But the part that happened in 2020 was the successful CE5 meditation. 7/14/2020, harmonic convergence. We're out in Kerrville, Texas, and we're got lights in the sky zooming by. It's a group of 8 of us. That includes our youngest daughter that we have now. She's 4, Violet Ray Sunshine. She was there only 2.5 weeks old in mama's arms. And we're now having extraterrestrial experiences. And before you know it, one of the girls is like, what are those lights in the ground? And there were lights in the tree line that were hanging out with us for 2 hours, flashing like Morse code. And we didn't get anything on video, but, we all saw it. Everybody was pretty much sober. And then one guy had little Tito's and OJ, but that was about it. And the next day from that experience is where I discovered that map back there of the 2 cosmic solar eclipses, literally making an X in Texas. I think, what is his name? George Strait. He might have known something. All my exes live in Texas. Johnny Cash might have known something. Take that train down to San Antonio. And, he also has a song, Ring of Fire. And, one of the first eclipses that came through from Oregon down was the Ring of Fire annular eclipse on 10/14/23. And that when it first crossed, it came into the United States where my friends Bob and Eden Sky make this. So it hit land at Eugene, Oregon, came in, went over Burning Man. Then it went over the Four Corners where the Hopi prophecy is held. Then it went over Roswell, New Mexico, where we have an ET crash. Then it went over what I discovered was Utopia, Texas, and an X marks the spot of the 2 solar eclipses. So a literal town named Utopia in a cosmic X that I followed to a land for sale because the first one I've been eyeballing was sold. The 753 acres bought and sold. I discovered that the day after the CE5 meditation, driving back to San Antonio. I'm like, hold on, detour. Is the land for sale? Because I hadn't looked at it in a couple of years. No, it's sold. Where do we go? Let's look at the Cosmic X. Oh, wow. What's in the middle? Oh, Utopia. Oh, let's look for land there. Now we found Miracle Springs Ranch. So literally a miracle in Utopia in a Cosmic X. We wound up staying out at the lodge there the weekend of 5/25/2021. That's where the galactic calendar came in through a friend. And it's me responding. My friend says, hey, Happy New Year to this new calendar thing. And I'm like, my guides internally were like, research that when you get home. And I did, and it led me to the galactic calendar, which has the banner of peace in it. Like when I found this thing, it had this banner of peace symbol. Where did they move it to? Now I think they moved it. I don't want to keep digging for it. But anyway, if you get your own galactic calendar, the banner of peace is in there. And it was showing the dystopian Gregorian calendar. On the other side was the galactic calendar, how it brings harmony. And so when we're looking at time and what it is in representation, it's just about as important as money because it's a baseline frequency that we can operate on. When it's incoherent, you're dealing with choppy waves. It's harder to dance on choppy waves. But if you have a 13-month, 28-day calendar, you know how the waves are riding and you can read it and be like, oh, the energy is this. Move to the left, move to the right. And now you're dancing on something that's much more harmonic and it's easier to find yourself there. And I think that's a big problem with the world is for them to be able to find themselves, they have to find themselves in an environment that is harmonic and conducive for them for it to stick. Because you can find yourself on choppy waters, but you might get shaken enough where you drop it. Right. And I see that's kind of what's happening with this process. So I'm here to show that Philosopher stones have been graded. A new timeline is available, physically, tangibly, real. And human design is your cosmic self. And you can find yourself through telling your own story. And the real part on water, when we really bring this full circle, is it's part of our planet mechanics. And so what these cosmic alignments and going to all these sacred sites and everything, it led me back to this city and the river, and the process of our San Antonio River not naturally flowing. So we have dams all up across our nation, and they're holding back water, and we created unnatural lakes. The water should flow into an aquifer system that purifies all the impurities, all the chemicals, all the energetic impurities too, because that's your mother saying, come home, I'll take you in, I'll clean you off. And then once it flows through, here in Texas, we have the Trinity Aquifer and then the Edwards Aquifer. Trinity's more dense, gets all the impurities and chemicals out. The Edwards, which flows from Dallas all the way down to San Antonio, is like an underground river. So this energy is like flowing. So now Austin is keep it weird, and everybody dances like hippies up there with their shoes off. So what they're doing is they're activating the mycelium and the root network of the ground. And what Dr. Masumoto said is now they're programming the waters below, and they're connecting with the sun above, and they're processing through the heart and their own experience and their filtering system. When they can get rid of all the, when they can purify themselves and their intent and their baseline frequency, that cosmic information as an availability, you contain more of a light quotient. You're allowed to process more information. So as you process the light codes and the information, it flows through you down to the soles of your feet. You dance around and you program the waters below. And so what naturally used to happen before the early 1900s is that water would flow out of over 100 natural artesian wells here in San Antonio and springs. Zero. We got zero now, right? And so taking out some of the dams, bringing the water flow back, filling up the aquifer, which creates pressure and then spits the water out of the aquifer, or the artesian springs, would allow that water to come up after it's been filtered from its mother as it flows down the San Antonio River all the way down to the salt water of the coast. It will exit out right next to Corpus Christi. Corpus Christi literally means the body of Christ. So we have our Mother Earth, and her waters. We create a natural flow, and we connect this clean, purified alkaline water, charged negative ion, with the salt water. That's how you make holy water. So once we connect these, and we programmed it with dancing and our intentions, and we swim in the water and use it for crops and everything, create a solar punk San Antonio, then I believe we would activate the ethers and create free energy. And all these different places like the Hathors, which is a keynote with the Nile, used to connect with underground rivers to the sea and these sacred sites. I believe that that's how we would create free energy once we create these synapses of our mother and our father and the waters, and putting our intentions into these spaces. I think that's the story, that these cosmic alignments, I mean, it's literally like God's finger saying, look here, look here. And when I looked there and I found Nikola Tesla towers, I found the aquifers, I found Boeing has multiple Nikola Tesla towers in their event center here in town. I found the unbroken crystal bed in Arkansas that the totality eclipse in April went over. And if we fast forward to 2027, we're going to Egypt. There's a totality eclipse that goes over Luxor and goes over the Temple of the Hathors in Dendata in 2027. And then if you look up the 2027 human design prophecy, you got that as one. You look up the Dogon prophecy, where they were connected to the beings from, excuse me, where they were connected to the beings from Sirius. And now we have a stone from Sirius. And the Dogon celebrate a festival or an event that happens every 60 years. I was looking up this documentary the other day, and they're like, oh, and that festival is going to be coming up again soon. And I'm like, don't tell me 2027. 2027. Dogon tribe, Hopi prophecy, Mayan prophecy, biblical prophecy, Egyptian, all human design. 2027 what we do from now until then is going to imprint where we go afterwards. And I think we can activate free energy. We can put these gardens and sustainable based curriculum in our schools. And that's a big mission that we're on with hosting events in different cities where we can gather people and get volunteers to clean up rivers, put gardens in schools, and then for one weekend or one festival day, we'll bring in all our performers, fire spinners, quantum technology, all the wonderful things, and it'll be free for those that go and volunteer. It won't be a paid event. We'll get sponsors and grants and other things to throw the event. But that's kind of the thing that Infinite You, my business, has moved into. How do we get more gardens in schools? How do we get more people volunteering? How do we get more cleanups? How do we get more engineers looking at how we can clean up our waters and do these things? And so we plan on making it super fun and festive. So we throw transformational festivals, and the way we're going to reward people to go to them is by them volunteering and racking up some hours and getting in for free. And Sedona
Wow.
next year is the first. The Mayan Day at a Time in San Antonio will be the first one on 7/25/2025. And then for my birthday, we're taking it full circle and we're going back to Sedona because 11/22, it's going to be a weekend. So we're going to do something in Sedona next year.
Well, that was a lot of information. There were so many synchronicities. There were so many things I wanted to say, but you were on a roll and I didn't want to interrupt what you were saying. There were tons of synchronicities for me. So I'll just let that all lay and let people
Yeah,
absorb it all. But that was a lot of information.
it is. That's why I've got to get this into a full book. And then we're working on a documentary. And, the book is just the tip of the iceberg because it has like a sequential event from the stories all the way to the solar eclipses and kind of where we lead there. But once you can get, because everything's fractalized, so even within this tip of the iceberg, you do get the full story, but you just got to dive deeper. And so that's where I'm going to be offering that with online courses and just all my social media. TikTok has a bunch of information, Facebook and YouTube and our podcast. And, we're just looking for people to find themselves and their own synchronicities within this story because it's not just mine. I'm here to bring the beginning parts of it. But at the end of the day, there's so much there that I think anybody can find some type of correlation to plug themselves into the ascension story.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that we're all a part of that. So tell people where they can find you with the website and
Yeah.
then a little bit about the book that we started with.
Yeah, absolutely. So the website is infiniteu.info, and the U is spelled out YOU. And all our social media is going to be under Infinite U 77. So the book is, again, it's basically just more of a quick synopsis that takes you from my awakening to Sedona, to the school, to the Philosopher Stones, to the CE5, and then back to how do we activate our communities with putting sustainability and garden-based curriculum, in all of our schools and neighborhoods.
Okay, excellent. Well, Harold, this is a fascinating story. Thank you for sharing this. And thank you for what you're doing to try and wake up the collective. And it's interesting to hear a lot of others have been saying that 2027 is a big time for this ascension or the Great Awakening or whatever you want to call it. So,
Mhm.
very
Absolutely.
consistent.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. And also, thank you for doing all the work that you're doing because, editing and everything that you're doing, it's not easy. I try to do my own stuff, and that's why I'm not necessarily a content creator, but the business is named Infinite You for a reason. We are all infinite when we can look outside of ourselves and honor our reflections and the path that they've walked and the skills that they bring. And when we are, synaptically communicating those together, then we become infinite because we're just this web of knowledge and information and skill share. So thank you so much for
Yeah.
being a part.
Oh, thank you. And thank you, everybody, for watching. Next up, check out this playlist of other NDE interviews. Please like and subscribe. It really helps this channel to grow so I can bring you more content. Thank you for watching. I'm so glad you're here.